Hey, it's Joy. Welcome back to the channel. Today I am sharing 3 different cards using 4 different techniques and some Copic coloring. Now, one of my favorite stamps happens to be our top selling stamp, which is the Some Gave All. And I am super proud of this stamp set. It is a rugged American flag, which represents the battles that our veterans have gone through. And if you didn't know, a lot of rugged flags are actually on display in the National Archives. So this stamp set comes with 3 different sentiments: One Nation Under God, Happy Veterans Day, and Happy Memorial Day, which Memorial Day doesn't seem like a happy event, but that's what we kind of have coined in the United States. So I taught this class earlier this year, and I typically do not want to put classes out that people have paid for, but it has been requested by the attendees that I publish this so that they can go back and watch it. So what you're seeing me do right now, I'm going to back up just a little bit. The first thing you saw me was take my C3 Copic marker and map out the deep shadows of the flag. Now I am taking my lightest color, which would be my highlight R24, and I am mapping out the stripes, because with this being a waving flag, it's real easy to get off course. So if you use your lightest color, 1, it's easier to remove, and 2, you're going to go over it with your darkest shadow color, so you don't have to worry about your highlight or your shadow at this point. I am repeating the same process with my C3 marker now, and you're going to see, like, where the ripples overlap, I am extending the C3, which is the darkest color, and I'm doing that on the far left-hand corner of each of these ripples. Now, you will notice that I'm only using 2 marker blends for this gray color, and that's because whites, whether it's a white object or not, white still picks up colors around it or shadows. So our C1 is going to be our midtone, and then our white of the paper is going to be our highlight, which is why we only need 2 colors. So from here, you're going to see me pick up the C1, and I'm going to extend that shadow out. And then we're going to go completely feathered into white. Very, very simple technique, but it's very necessary in the end to make this look like a waving flag. So I'm going to repeat this process. I'm using my R89. So my favorite red combination, I take that back, it was an R59. It's R59, 4-6, 2-4, and a 2-9. So let me repeat that so it's in the right order. The darkest being R59, 2-9, 4-6, and 2-4. So in those same areas that we put the C3, or the darkest color where the ripples overlap, I am putting in that R59, and I leave it smaller, so smaller flicks at the top of each of the stripes, and then I elongate those towards the bottom, and that is going to give us the illusion that the flag is moving, because obviously we have a one-dimensional object that we're trying to make it look like 3-dimensional. And I'm just being very careful to put those in the same exact spots that C3 was in. My next color is an R29. Now with Copics, the 9 means that it has the most saturation or the most gray in it. So in theory, 5-9 and 2-9 are part of the same family, meaning they have the same gray, but it's the amount of pigmentation for the vibrancy of the red. And if you want to know more about Copics, I do have a coloring bundle that explains all kinds of Copics, the shadows, that kind of thing. That is available on the website. You'll just need to Google that, or you can look at the description box below. So I use that R29, and I extended those shadows, making the top part of the stripe smaller than the bottom. So I elongated that bottom part to make the eye move. Now I'm coming in with my R46. My R46 is my midtone. What does that mean in the Copic world or in coloring world? It means it is what the eye sees the most of. So you see shadows, but you see the vibrancy of the midtone. and I extend those out, and you're going to notice that I also extended that in from the right, so it would be over the hump of where those creases are. And then I come in with this R24. R24 is the highlight color, or the brightest part of the flag. And I am coloring in those areas, and I'm going to make sure that the right and the left now are connected by that midtone. If you happen to lose your shadow color, the R59, you can come back in and draw that in, or flick that in the areas that we previously discussed. Another thing is, if for some reason you don't have all the colors, or maybe you don't want all the colors, I don't know, you can use your C3 and your C1 in place of your R59. That way you're eliminating the cost of all the markers, but your grays, whether it's a warm gray or a cool gray or a toner, it doesn't matter which ones, you can use those to put in cast shadows or darken your Copics. So what's nice about Copics are they are translucent and they're buildable, meaning when you put one layer down, you can put another one on and it gets darker. So you can overlap your colors, like say your grays with your reds, or your grays with your blues, grays with anything, and you can make it darker. So here, normally I color with a 3 to 5 color blend, which I'm breaking all of my rules today. For the blue part, I am using a B37 right now, and then I'll come in with that B39. You'll notice where those ripples are in the star area of the flag. I still use that C3 to put that cast shadow in, and now I am just putting in that B37. Now, admittedly, this B37 takes longer than I want on video, just because you've got all the stars, which makes it like some fiddly coloring, but it's really not hard. It's just a little bit more time consuming than, say, the stripes. So once I finish up the B37, I then come in with the B39. So the B39 is our darkest shadow color, and I am putting that in the same spots that I put the C3 or the R59 along the creases of the flag. So I'm extending that to the right and left of the folds, and I'm also putting it on the left border of the flag. And that way we're tricking the eye into thinking that this flag is moving. Now I want to tell you that all 3 flags that you're going to see today are colored exactly the same way, the same technique. So I'm not going to go through this coloring 3 times, okay? But I wanted you to be aware. I also am showing you an ink smushing technique. So we are using a distress ink. You can use any dye-based or water-based ink to do an underpainting with Copics. So I used, I think that was tea dye. I smushed that onto my glass mat. I added some water with my atomizer spray bottle, and then I am just ink smushing that down. Now we are going to be coloring over this. So you just want to keep going. Now you saw me rub my finger through the ink, and what that does is it gives you more of a watercolor look. If I had just used the water without rubbing my finger through it, you would have gotten like the bubbles, and that's where you're going to get like nuggets of color. So it just depends on what you're looking for. I am trying to emulate like battle scars and the dirt of a battle. So that's why I went with the watercolor effect, but you do whatever makes you happy. But I'm loving the texture of this. Now it's real important that you dry this. I'm using my heat tool from WOW, and you're going to notice that I dry the front and the back, and the reason I do that is it keeps the paper from warping. You are going to have some warping, but not a ton if you do back and forth. So like once it starts to get dry, you see it starts to curl up. If you flip it over, then it flattens back down. So that's a really cool thing to remember when you're drying paper or anything for this matter. The other thing is you can sort of retrain your paper by bending it, and that straightens it out. So you're just seeing me do that little bit of exercise as a reminder that you can flatten out your paper and keep working. Now I stamped the flag right over that and then I colored it. The only difference that I did is I used a W3 and a W1 instead of the cool gray colors. I am die cutting this out with the Some Gave All die. I used the cross to sort of get an idea. So we're moving on to different cards. We're going to assemble them all at one time. So I'm back to the white panel. I'm die cutting the cross out of the center. I stamped the All Gave Some Gave All, which is an amazing sentiment in my opinion. Now I'm taking some tape adhesive and I'm going around the cross like in a rectangle. You can get real close to the borders. It just depends how big you want your shaker elements to be. This adhesive is really good. I do recommend using tear tape instead of a tape runner. I think that you'll get a more permanent adhesion. My tape runner that I'm using is awesome, so that's why I didn't do that. So I took some acetate and I glued that down, and now I'm taking foam tape. Now this is a little bit different than what your normal like shaker card looks like, and I'll explain that in a second, but I'm making sure to close in that cross. And again, if you wanted to get real close to the cross and only want your shaker bits to be like a real tight space, then you could close that in. I wanted mine to have some movement. I did have to cut my tape in half so it would go along the cross. Now this is what I'm saying is different. I put that foam tape down in a piece of white paper, and that's so that the cross would look white. I'm going for like the Arlington Cemetery look. And then I put down more foam tape so it would be the same height, so you'll see that in a second. I am now gluing the black mat down onto the white card base. And a little trick that I like to do is I put down some glue onto my foam tape so that I just have a few seconds of wiggle room in case you can't get the panel on straight. I absolutely cannot get panels on straight the first time, so that's why I do that. Now I'm using some of the same sequins. These were just for my stash and I'm decorating this. You could leave this out or you could use anything that you have in your stash, but I do fiddle with this a little bit because that's what I like to do. I'm kind of a fiddler. I like things to be perfect. Now we're moving on to the antique flag. I am putting down a piece of craft paper onto the card base. This is a full 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 panel. And I'm gluing that straight onto the card base. And then I'm trying to decide on my design here. I ultimately cut down a piece of red paper to be 4 by 5 1/4, and then I do a navy. I think it's in 3 1/4 by 4 1/2, and I mat those. So I pop up my flag with foam tape because I like texture and dimension on my cards, and I put that on the navy card base, or I'm sorry, panel, and then I adhere that to the red base, and then ultimately onto the craft. Okay, and then I stamped the Happy Veterans Day on that, and I added some of the penny rhinestones from our shop. Now you're going to see me making my own stencil. Okay, so this is like, I think technique number 4 or 5 maybe. And so I just ripped this paper just in a haphazard way, and I'm using I think this is Prize Ribbon Distress ink. You could use any blue that you wanted or that you have in your stash. And I am just blending this over the panel. And you're going to see that I kind of offset these, and I'm always moving the torn edges so that they're not exactly the same pattern. And that's just a really fun way to do a sky, to do mountains, to do a hillside, you name it, you can do it with torn paper. Now there are a lot of cool stencils out there, and I'm not knocking them. In fact, you'll probably see stencils coming up in my line here shortly, like to release later on. But I wanted you to see that you don't have to own every single thing to have outstanding cards. That's the whole point of the one stamp 3 cards, 4 techniques. I think it's more like 5 techniques actually. And then once I get this done, I use whatever is left on my brush, and I do pick up some extra, and I go around the edges just to form a vignette to bring your eye into the center of the panel. Now I'm using some antique stars. I think they're called primitive stars. Anyway, I use this from my cutting machine. and I mat those in both white and in navy. I stamp the One Nation Under God onto that panel, and I glue that directly onto the card base as a full front panel. And once I get that down, then I start assembling my card. So it's super cool. Again, everything will be linked in the description box below if you're interested. For those of you that are coming for my class, thank you so much for signing up and hanging out with me for, I think it was like 90 minutes. It was a lot of fun in Lakeland. So you're going to see me fidget here with my layout just a hair. And all I'm doing is taking 5 different stars. I'm putting some of them behind, some of them in front of the flag, and I'm scattering. I did leave that corner of the flag hanging off just so that it made it look like there was more going on in the scene. I'm tricking the eye into there being a vast sky with these starbursts, okay? So you'll see me once I have that on my card base. I do trim that off with a long shears. I find that a long shears works better. These happen to be by Tim Holtz, but again, anything that you have on your desk or in your kitchen drawer will work for this. I mean, all we're doing is lobbing off the edges, right? So this is probably my favorite cards because there's a lot of movement in it. I use some of the same sequins that we use for our shaker, and I just scatter those along. And I use a crafter's wand. Now we do have rose gold crafter's wands in the shop if you are interested, and we have replacement wax tips for those, so we always have them. So we're going to take some final looks at my card. We're zooming in and out on the shaker, and then we're on the one with the 5 stars, and then we're going to end it with the rugged flag with the ink swishing and the underpainting. Thank you so much for hanging